Did you listen to the Hot Breakfast this morning? Here's what you missed.
Welcome to Hot 96. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeff. Chairman. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
This budget of yours is coming under a lot of attack, huh? A lot of heat.
Yes, it's going to take very bold steps as a country to go back to economic recovery. And Jeff, we might try to paint a very good image of how you're doing economically, but the truth is we are in a very deep hole. Out of the proposed budget that was approved by the National Assembly, if you look at the ceilings, what we call the budget policy statement, that was across the political divide by the National Assembly, it gives us what we call a fiscal deficit between the revenues and expenditures of 668 billion shillings. Out of that, we have a law that caps the amount of money we can borrow at any particular time, and the current cap for a loan is capped at 10 trillion shillings. So which gives us what we call fiscal space of around 610 billion shillings. So we can only finance a budget up to 610 billion. But Parliament across, and again I would like to say this, across the political divide, has approved an expenditure of 668 billion shillings. So from even where we sit, we have already a deficit of around, that would be 58 billion shillings. And Jeff, now that begs a question, so what do we do? You saw a report by Modi the last 2 weeks, downgrading our borrowing ratings, like what we call credit scores, which means, and not just that, even in terms of what the public is saying, what the economic is saying, is that we cannot absorb any more debt. So we have a budget finance, and when I mean this budget finances, every time we travel across the country, every time we interact with the constituents, they're telling us we need a new road, we need more people connected to electricity, we need more supply of water. There's this very ambitious project of making sure that we complete our stadia across the country. So where are we going to tap to finance that particular budget? And that's why it's becoming like something that people do not want us to do, but what is the option? And if you realize how we've got here a few years ago, every time that we'll be hit by a fiscal deficit, like by the previous regime, the first thing they'll do is borrow. So we went and accumulated our debts so much that there is hardly any other room, any other leg room to borrow, which now makes us, we have to expand our tax base. We have to collect our own revenue. And someone will ask, Jeff, then, why don't we cut on expenditure? And Jeff, if almost many sectors of our economy are already contracting. If you go to agriculture, we came from a very long period without rains. Most of our small businesses, our informal sector, are just recovering from the shocks we got during COVID, and therefore most of the sectors in the economy are contracting. You saw even media houses, Standard Group, the last 2 weeks posting a loss. The first loss we're seeing in the last few years. And if then, and remember, government is the largest spender in any particular country. So government spending actually spurs economic growth. You should go to a town like Naivasha, and if there are no government meetings going on there, then the town is dead. And the ripple effect is all those jobs that are created around that ecosystem are not there. If you go to Mombasa and there are no all these meetings of NGOs and mostly government, then Mombasa goes to a standstill. If that happens, then it has a whole ripple effect of our airline sector, of our transport sector, of our entertainment sector. It's a whole ripple effect. So we cannot cut government expenditure. And remember also, we have constitutional requirements. For example, counties. We have constitutional requirement of supporting the judiciary. So all these constitutional requirements that have obligations that must be honored. We have a Eurobond, for example, that is maturing next year. So all these things are coming up at a time when now we need to make drastic decisions. And drastic decisions, Jeff, have not always been popular.
Yeah, but at the same time, Frederick Kango, the opposition says, Punda amechoka.
Absolutely. Jeff and Nick, and I want to say this without the fear of contradiction, that the budget by Jubilee, or rather by Kenya Kwanza, the budget by Kenya Kwanza, the Finance Bill 2023 that was prepared by Kenya Kwanza is a punishment to the people of Kenya. This proposal is dismantling the middle class in various forms and fashions. It's going to kill the poor. This proposal does not create wealth. This proposal is a tsunami of taxes that is going to finish the very poor and dismantle the middle class. Why? This is a regime that came into office on the platform of uplifting the lowly placed, they call Hustler. This budget is dismantling and finishing the hustlers in various forms and fashions. We can be told here of how there's a deficit, of how there's no other way to generate revenue, of how we must get the pen now and become better tomorrow. But I can tell you, Jeff, the people of Kenya have fastened their belts long enough. The people of Kenya have suffered long enough. This time, they are not going to suffer again in the hands of a regime that do not take care of them, in the hands of a regime that has made it their business to ensure that they strangle the pay slips of the civil or of the public servants. Today, why is there a robust discussion about this budget like never before? Because this budget is a budget that is punishing the poor. This budget is dismantling the middle class. This budget is going to take away even from those who have made money that is supporting the lowly placed. Mheshimiwa here earns more than 500,000. His money is going to be taxed to the tune of 30%, 35%. He supports very many people down here. When that happens, it means he will not be able to support them because his disposable income has been affected. What we are saying as Azimio, that this budget must be rejected. They have given the public an opportunity to participate. But at the same time, they are saying that the government never loses. My good friend Osoro said that the government never loses, and he assured his boss that they're going to pass it without changing even a comma. What does that tell you? The public participation is going to be useless. Remember, Jeff, the principles of public participation demands that the views of the public must be incorporated in the final decision. But here is a regime that is telling us that we are not going to change even a comma. They have introduced issues of 3% levy, and they call it a levy, housing fund contribution. In real sense, in my operation definition, it is a compulsory contribution. What is a tax? Look at the Oxford Dictionary. Compulsory contribution levied on government revenue, in my view, by the government, on state revenue by the government from the workers' income. You know? So, whichever name they give it, they call it, Honorable Ruto called it, what do you call it? They call it patriotic contribution. It's not patriotic. The people of Kenya, their pay slips is on the negative. And they say you have to save. You cannot save if you cannot eat for the day. What are you saving? And you cannot have food. Your children are crying. We are saying that for us in Azimio, we have instructed our members of parliament to engage with the view of finding a solution to this issue called Finance Bill 2023. But if they use their artificial majority on the floor to pass this bill, it will be their bill, it will be Kenya Kwanza bill, it will be Kenya Kwanza strangling Kenyans. We leave it at that.
Maybe break down for us, because you know sometimes the people were on the news, the people were complaining FKA is coming up in arms, and some people are computing it wrong. So there's the people are saying 35 plus 16 VAT plus 3%. So by the time he's done all his calculations, it's remained with like 1,000 bob. So I don't know, some people are just not getting. Because see now you've broken it down and said now this is a new tax bracket.
It's a new tax bracket.
Then now someone may understand. But now break it down all these increments so that it makes sense to the ordinary mwananchi. Because some people just read the calculator and just saying 35 plus 16 plus 3 plus 2 plus NSSF, NHIF, you know. And they're saying you remain with 41%.
Thank you very much. Let me try to break that down. So if you earn more than $500,000 shillings, so you just increase a new tax bracket, which I'm now going to pay. Your increment now will be 5%, because you're paying 30%, so it would be like the 5% minus 30%, it's 5% of what you're paying more. That's one. On the issue of housing levy, for example, it is 3% of your basic pay and capped at 5,000 shillings, including employer's contribution.
Or including?
Including, yes. So the highest amount of deduction that anyone is going to make, even if you earn 10 million shillings a month, is 2,500.
Okay, let me stop you there.
And your employer has to.
And this is a housing levy.
Yes.
Which house am I going to get after I've contributed to this housing levy? Will I still have to get a mortgage to buy the house?
Let me break it down. First of all, let's try to separate.
Okay.
Let's separate the house that they're going to build from the housing levy. Let me explain the housing levy first. So the 3% of your gross is capped again at 2,500. So the maximum any Kenyan is going to pay is 2,500. The employer is forced to match by 2,500, and this actually only applies to civil servants.
Ah, okay.
You know, I also need to make that clear. The what is on the bill is the 3% housing levy is for civil servants, anybody employed by government. Then if you look at NHIF, and when now my good friend here talks about it as a tax, look at, for example, National Social Security Fund contribution. There's a contribution that's made by the employee, and there's a contribution that's made by the employer, which becomes payable to retirement. This one, you don't have to wait for retirement. In the next 7 years, you can withdraw your money from the fund. You will get the 3% that you contributed, the 3% that your employer contributed, plus interest that was accrued from the fund. Then there's something we call hypothecation. And this is the first time that we're applying this in our tax system, where we are thinking about, so that we can become accountable to Kenyans. Whatever we are collecting from you, what are you doing with it? So that you can hold us accountable for it. So that housing levy now, what is it going to do? It's going to housing. How is this housing model being fashioned? We have realized that there is an actual demand of 200,000 houses every year. That is a fact. Out of all the employed people, including the private sector, the uptake of mortgages is very low, because the price of houses is crazy. So what we end up happening is that we end up being slaves to our landlords. Because in the entire time of your payment, if you look at how much you pay in terms of your rent, if you live in an apartment for the next 20 years, it's actually going to be like 5-10 times more the cost of that particular apartment. But also, there has been a deliberate effort to make sure that this is not affordable. So what we're doing is bring up affordable housing, where the repayment plan for those houses is equivalent of those people's rent.
Our good friends from Kenya Kwanza, including Kuria, seated with me here, they have a way of confusing Kenyans. You know, they say if you can't convince them,
Confuse them.
they are confusing the people of Kenya. We must all agree that this issue of 3% deduction, what they call, his leader called it compulsory. It is a tax. Whether you baptize it, whichever name, it is a deduction, it is a mandatory deduction.
Is NSF a tax?
And, okay, talk of NHIF and NSF. They are telling us that they are going to manage it in the same fashion of those schemes. These schemes have been mismanaged. NHIF has been mismanaged. NSSF has been mismanaged. And Kenyans are very worried. If they are going to manage this fund the same way they have mismanaged, or previous regimes have mismanaged the NHIF and NSSF, then it is not worth it. But let me go back to the issue. The issue of deduction. Kuriam is saying that it is just a maximum of 2,500. Jeff, even 1 shilling is affecting your disposable income at a time when this economy is melting down. We cannot subject Kenyans to that path. We cannot. We shall not. And that's why we are saying, while the idea might be good, while the idea must be adorable, but at a time when we have nothing, today they are telling us that it is only for the civil servants. These civil servants are poorly paid. You saw the other day, the workers did not get their increment. And today, they're saying, okay, if that's the case, the unions, not yesterday, they said, no salary increment, no tax. They started saying, the other time the nurses, the doctors, why is it that their own civil servants are saying that this thing is bad? Because it is affecting their disposable income. Secondly, what Kure is not telling you is this. The people that they believe put them into office, the lowly placed, he has admitted that a lot of times these are the people who are mostly affected. But you know, the principles of public finance also demand that there shall be equitable, the burden of taxation shall be equitable. And therefore, if you make a tax regime that is going to affect the lowly placed, you are actually impoverishing them. But now, Jeff, the most important thing here is this. There's this space called digital space. Majority of the young people are creative and innovative, and this is where they thrive. Do you know what these gentlemen and ladies have done? They are saying that they are going to attack that space and they'll be withholding tax of 15%.
Up from 5.
Yes, in a space that the young people are thriving in. Today, the young people are listening to me. Listen to me carefully. This regime is coming for you. They are affecting and approaching very fast at a space where you thrive and be creative. They don't want you to thrive. They don't want you to make money for yourselves. They want to make you slaves. We know for sure that it is important that we cushion our young people and perform, and support their performances in whatever space. Number 2 is this VAT. They told us that in the last regime, and they have said that the issue of VAT, oh no, he has not said, but one of his colleagues said that it was of the subsidy on fuel, and there were issues around it. But look, we are moving from 8% back to 16%. This was cushioned by subsidy. They're saying subsidy, they want to subsidize production, they don't want to subsidize consumption. A good idea in the long run, but a bad idea in the short term when people have no food on the table. So, what is going to happen, you woke up yesterday, Jeff, and you realize that fuel has just gone up. What that means is that everyone who consumes products that are made from fuel will have to pay a little extra. I was just fueling when I was coming here, and I've spent a little extra that I was not spending 2 days ago. That is affecting my utility bills. It's affecting in a big way. He also said that there's a deficit of 200. They have realized a deficit of 200,000 houses per year, something like that. If I got it right, they are not giving a citation of these, which data is showing these, because I know for sure. They have also told us that most of the people who are employed by the government, they have a mortgage facility that they have been servicing. Others have gone to the bank through their own arrangements, they have it. Others have bought plots. Now, they're telling you, save, so that after 7 years, if you don't want it, you can get back your money. But they're not telling you that the government has a contract with the people for only 5 years. What if, after 5 years, they go home, and then the new regime comes and change that policy? What happens? What happens? We have seen mismanagement of funds before, as I said. Jeff, I am putting this thing in a very simple language that the people of Kenya can understand. I don't want to use jargons of taxation that they don't understand. The simple fact is, people, my countrymen, this bill is not a bill. It is a pill that you must not swallow because it's being forced down your throat. This is a bad bill. It must be rectified. The members of parliament reject it. You must participate because your voice is needed. Go out there in the forum where they're conducting the public participation and give your voice and outline the issues that you have with this bill so that it can be amended and we have a bill that can be passed to become law such that it cushions the Kenyans from these bad economic times. Lastly, we know for a fact that they have got the capacity to, push this bill down the throat of Kenyans. We know. We have seen what they're doing in Parliament. Parliament is captured. We have seen what the executive is saying. Say, it will happen, you like it, don't like it. But we are asking them, in the spirit of supporting the people of Kenya, Kenya Kwanja, please, listen to the voices. Your civil servants have complained. Your people have complained. The people that voted for you have complained. Listen to them. But one thing that is interesting, Jeff, he says that people are asking, why don't we cut down on expenditure? The austerity measures that this Kenya Kwanza regime must do. Number one, they must stop using public money on political operations. It is interesting, so that they save money. that a CS uses 20 million on chopper, for example, to go and distribute food worth 1 million. It is interesting that a CS travels overseas with a delegation like that of a head of state. That is public money. It is interesting that a regime says they need chief administrative officers or secretaries, 50 of them, while the public service recommended 23. These are people that come with security, office space, secretaries. That is money. So Kuria cannot tell the public that they cannot cut down on the expenditure. They are living beyond their means. They should start from there. As a meal, we shall give the people of Kenya the people's budget. We are going to do it because we must offer alternative. And at that time, I'm sure you'll invite us back and dissect our bill. Because we cannot live in a country where it is either their way or no way. You know? So we are asking them to listen to us.
The civil service are paid, it's not very decent, you know. At the very top, the people of 1 million shillings, and at the very bottom, there's a grown-up taking 18,000 shillings. What are we doing to better the lives of these people? Are we going to come up with policies that can bring investors into country, create 1 million jobs, and people can leave the civil service, that expenditures can go low? Because if it was me, we'd have something like that. So personally, I even told Jeff last week, but I think minimum wage in Kenya should be 50,000 shillings. But do we have such in place that even when you say you're taxing, we figure out, because you can't add someone 5,000 then take 4,800, you know what I mean?
Yeah, true.
So is there something like that in the works?
You remember a few years ago, especially during Kibaki's time, when there was this revamping of the economy, then we actually had more collection of taxes that particular time because there was money in the pockets of everybody.
Yes.
There were a lot of sectors were expanding. The banks were opening branches. They were coming to telling, do you want a loan or not? The construction industry was expanding. The service sector was expanding. Remember, that's when we had companies like Safaricom come and issue an LPO that was oversubscribed. We had a boom in the economy. That's what we're trying to create. And how are we doing this? We've actually realized that we have a lot of potential in the skills of Kenyans, in manufacturing, for example. But even when we try, every cottage industry that tries to create something, if, for example, you go to along Kiambu Road or Ngong Road or wherever, you find all these paint shops, you know, these factories that are producing their own paints. You're going to see a lot of companies that are doing their own mabati, like mills, yes. You're finding a lot of manufacturing happening in this country, but they're not being able to thrive because of competition from Chinese products.
And what are we doing to counter that? You know, like the Chinese give...
That's why we're going
you're going...
we have now created tax incentive for those businesses. We have created increased investment deductions for investment in particular sectors, like cement, paints, like steel, so that we grow those particular sectors. So we're giving them a tax incentive that if you come and invest in this particular business, in manufacturing of medicine, manufacturing of pharmaceuticals, manufacturing of pesticides and agricultural products, all these things, we're giving them an incentive. Not just that, we are quote-unquote punishing anybody who imports those finished goods that can be produced locally. That means the imposition of 30% import duty on imported cement means that if you go to the shop, if you go to the hardware and you'll be told there are two cements. The locally manufactured cement will say the price of cement is around 680 shillings, let's say 700 shillings. The imported cement will attract 30% import duty. It means 30% of 700 is 210. It actually means that a bag of cement, imported cement, will now cost 910, whereas the local cement will cost 700 shillings. So obviously what's going to happen is that the demand for local products is going to increase because, Nick and Jeff, we have such a huge customer base for our products. And if we just found a way of making we produce for our local customers, then we're going to have a very good boom in our country. For the very first time, we have taken a bold step of taxing imported fish, something nobody dared touch. The previous regime, there was that attempt, and then there was so much pressure from the Chinese, and it was dropped. Now, by imposing 30% tax on, because if you go, most people, and I know people here love fish.
Yes.
And you can't tell whether you're eating real fish or Chinese or really Chinese fish. So you post a 30%.
Only Nick and me can tell.
We are the experts.
Yes, I love fish, but I can't even tell. But by imposing 30% import duty on imported fish, therefore means that fish from our own lakes and from our own ponds are going to be 30% cheaper, and anything that comes down from the Chinese will be 30% more expensive. So this, and now all these are products that you're saying, if you bring anything in the country that can be manufactured locally, you pay 30%. And therefore, even in the event that something happens, for example, a few like what happened with on the Ukraine and Russia. We're just chilling. Then some guys are fighting there, and then boom, it affects us. So even if we had shocks, international shocks that came to us, we would have had circulation of money in the country. And even if prices would increase for whatever other reason, then Kenyans would have money in their pockets to afford it. So what we're trying overall is to make sure that we grow our local production, is we increase our manufacturing sector, is we create jobs. For example, these houses that we're talking about, we have a slum in Molo called Kasarani. Part of the beneficiaries of this housing scheme is the people of Kasarani. So if we have those houses being built there, it means a lot of people that go out every day to look for jobs will have some job. And if we are able to do the 200, not if, because we shall do it, when we do those 200,000 units of houses every year, and each house just employs 5 people, it actually means that we're going to have 1 million Kenyans working, getting paid. The ripple effect of that is that watu watakuwa wanatokea pale nje wananunua lunch yao kutoka kwa mwenye anauza hapo. Huyo mtu ataenda kwa shop anunue nguo mpya. Huyo mtu ataweza kupay obligations zake za landlord. Huyo mtu atakuwa na pesa ya kulipa cab ama ya kufanya vitu zingine. And so if we just need to increase money back in the economy. A few years ago, Jeff and Nick, you'd get 20 shillings on the road. And even though the value of the shilling was very high, hakukuwa na competition kuchukua. Right now, I don't remember the last time I saw any coin on the road.
If this proposal passes, then what?
We're going to have a revamp in the economy. We're going to have jobs being created. We're going to expand our manufacturing sector.
Okango?
If this proposal passes, the people of Kenya will live to regret. And let me tell you, Jeff, there's something that Kuria is not saying. Why is it that the regime or previous regimes have failed to collect? Why is it KRA is not collecting as they should? That question should be answered. The reason is because of corruption. We have seen instances where so many people use the gaps in the revenue collection system to amass wealth for themselves. So there are also tax evasions that we have seen. And we know for sure that this country is rich, they can work out hard, and they can collect more. They should expand the tax base, but don't increase the taxes. Number two, he talks about this housing, the vision of this housing fund and how it can create houses. But I want to refer him back to what we call the small dome institutes in rural Korea, where a similar scheme has worked. These people, they copy programs that they don't know how to implement. First of all, the involvement of the public, not only in terms of contribution, but in terms of even materials that are going to be used, in terms of location, in terms of the creation of a complex. It's not just a house. You need sanitation. You need roads there. You need electricity. You need water. You need schools and health facilities so that it becomes a model that everyone can emulate. They are not talking about that. They're just saying, we'll give you houses. If today you are earning 10,000, for argument's sake, and for the people listening to us, 10,000, you are deducted 2,500. Your employer gives 2,500. You have 5,000. The cheapest house today probably is costing you how much? 2 million. How many years would you require to contribute to get into that house?
What was you calculate?
If you do that math,
137 years old.
Yeah, about 137 years.
Let me tell you, Jeff, 90 years plus. So that means you will not be able to get into this house. That's why they are saying that now, if you don't need the house after 7 years, it is a saving, you can take it. But look, you have denied yourself a lot of opportunities by giving 2,500 every month to an extent that now you are not able to do anything. When you get that money, even if you want to invest in somewhere else, how old will you be?
You'll be an old man.
That's what we are saying. Let's apply programs that are practical. And again, let's also borrow from countries or states that have money to do this in a better manner. But most importantly, This regime must listen to the people. This regime is not listening to the people. I am shocked that they still continue talking about the hustlers. The hustlers have come to Azimio and they have told us, we were duped, please help us. Today they're not even talking about the hustlers fund anymore. It is nowhere in their radar. They're talking about a tax that is going to affect the very, very bottom placed.